What up, everybody? We're down to the final two episodes of what I feel like's been a really solid season 4 BMF. And by the episode 9 trailer, we can tell there's going to be a lot of action going down in the next episode. One thing we know is going to happen in episode 9, based upon the trailer, is that there's going to be a car explosion. This footage was also in the season 4 trailer as well. And we can tell by the explosion that whoever's in the car, if there is in fact someone in the car, or even around the car at the time of the explosion, that they're not going to survive. Based upon the footage before the car explodes, I can't make out the exact model of the car, neither does the location where the car explosion takes place look familiar. But we can rule out that this happens at Meech's house in Atlanta, as I have a picture of that house on the screen now, and we can tell it's not the same house. And we can also tell that it's not Keisha's house in Detroit that T bought for her in season 3, as I have a picture of that on the screen now, and that's a brick house. And if I was just to look at the tree in the ground as well as the style of the house, from the little bit we can see, I'm thinking that this car explosion happens in Los Angeles while Meech and T are there, or a small possibility that it's in Texas with Keisha and Boom potentially taking a trip to Texas to make a deal with Boom's connect Giovanni, or maybe even in Mexico. At the top of my list of who I think will die in the car explosion is Loco, because in this episode Meech and T is going to be in LA to meet up with Loco to get an introduction to his boss named Manuel. But with that said, Loco also warned Meech that his cartel was currently in a war with a rival cartel, and he didn't tell Meech that for no reason. Him telling Meech this is going to come back into play at some point in time. Not to mention from the episode 9 exclusive images, we can see that Meech and T gets the introduction to Manuel in episode 9 while in LA. So it might just be perfect timing that Meech and T meet Loco's boss when Loco gets taken off the board. But with that said, it might just be too much of a coincidence that Loco's boss all of a sudden wanted to meet Meech and T. Then as soon as he does, Loco gets taken off the board. Keep in mind how the soldiers from his cartel who picked up Meech, T, and Loco were acting when they picked him up, questioned him if he was a snitch, then wanted to leave T behind because he let the boy go who was a spy. But T started telling the cartel that him and Meech were Loco's biggest earners back in the States, and Loco convinced the cartel to bring T along, saying that he needs him, and confirmed that Meech and T were his biggest earners in the States. Now all of a sudden, Manuel wants to meet Meech and T, someone Loco has told him he trusts and that nobody moves the work faster than. So I think that Manuel is most likely behind the car bombing so he can take Loco out, cutting out the middleman and just one more person he would have to deal with. Not to mention if Loco's the member of Manuel's cartel who's making him the most money, Loco could be becoming too powerful within the cartel, and Manuel could potentially see Loco as a threat. Keeping in mind his leadership in taking over the cartel is relatively a new reign after the death of Pablo Escobar. This is also why I think the rival cartel has started a war now, because they see Loco's cartel as weakened after Pablo's death. That and the fact that the routes coming in through Colombia to places like Miami have dried up, and now the products coming in through Mexico to places like California and Texas. So the war with the rival cartel is most likely a war over the border and who controls the weight coming into the US. And because Loco has already told Meech that his cartel is in war with a rival cartel, Manuel could easily pin Loco's death on the rival cartel, knowing that Meech and Loco were close. And if Meech knew the truth that it was Emmanuel who took out Loco, it could potentially affect their business relationship. Not to mention, not just anybody can pull off a car bombing. I think that's definitely something that's out of the playbook of the cartel. But at the same time, if it's not Manuel trying to take Loco off the board to cut out the middleman and work with Meech and T directly. And it is in fact a rival cartel who takes Loco off the board. This could potentially be a big problem for Meech and Terry moving forward, because even though Manuel might meet Meech and T this episode, that doesn't necessarily mean that he wants to work with them directly. And even in a worst case scenario, he could potentially even blame Meech and T for Loco's death, saying it's not a coincidence that when they came into town, Loco got killed. Not to mention, if it's a rival cartel who kills Loco, Manuel could potentially also have a target on his back. And with that said, it might not be Loco who gets killed in the car explosion. What if it's actually Loco's boss, Manuel? And that would create a whole new issue if it's Manuel who gets taken off the board. The rival cartel could potentially take Manuel off the board, cutting the head off the snake. Then even if Loco's alive, if his boss gets taken out, and the rival cartel potentially wins the war, this could mean that Loco's supply is dried up, and Meech and T would no longer have a supplier. And I think it's definitely a good possibility that it ends up that way one way or another, because the fact in real life, Meech literally had to move to LA around 1996 for about a year or two to find a new supplier when things had dried up for him. And with that said, it might be necessary for Meech to get away from Atlanta for a while also, and not show his face around there for a minute, because the fact he's about to be in a whole new mess with Detective Bryant after B. Mickey just killed Bryant's informant Laz, setting Meech, T, and BMF up, making it look like it was them, and making it look like they found out that Laz was wearing a wire and they killed him for it. Keep it in mind that Laz took the wire off and threw it down as soon as he walked out of Platinum Palace. And one more thing concerning the cartel before I move on that I found interesting and wanted to bring up is that Loco's name is Geronimo Manuel Jimenez. Keep it in mind that his boss is also named Manuel, which is Loco's middle name. That could potentially mean that they're family or something like that, and Loco's last name being Jimenez is an Easter egg to the Jimenez cartel from OG Power. And the trailer also shows Meech connecting with a gang and telling them that he knows LA's all about colors, but he's about green. But what if the meeting with this particular gang doesn't go as Meech planned, and they have a problem with Meech, and potentially could be the ones to put the car bomb on Meech's car or somebody's car who he's with in LA as a way to take Meech out or send him a message that he's not welcome in LA, similar to how Remy Ransom tried to send a message to Meech when he first showed up in Atlanta, letting him know that he wasn't welcome in Atlanta. In real life, I do know that Meech had connections with the LA Crips. I don't know about his connection with the LA Bloods, and that does look like who he's talking to in the trailer. So if the Bloods attempt to threaten Meech or try to take him out from that car explosion, that could be why Meech ultimately connects with the LA Crips for protection against the Bloods. And before I wrap this video up, I also want to address the possibility that it could be something involved with Boom and Keisha in Texas. We know for sure that it's not Keisha in the car explosion, because the same trailer shows Boom ramming his car into Keisha and trying to kill her, something that also happened in real life. But at the same time, we know something's gonna happen between Boom and Keisha this episode that pisses him off. So he possibly finds out that Keisha's trying to backdoor him with Giovanni and gets revenge on both Keisha and Giovanni. He got his revenge on Keisha when he rammed into her car and left her for dead on the side of the road, and potentially gets revenge on Giovanni by making his car explode and taking him out. And there you have it. Leave your thoughts, theories, and predictions in the comments.